Australians will make law, family law, more than any other legal area. And the experience at the moment is way too lengthy, painful and unfair. Now, to my panel of legendary broadcasters, which means they've never short of something to say. That's what we like. In one corner, from Perth 6PR, although she's in Melbourne tonight, columnist with the West Australian, Gemma Tognini. Hi there, Gemma.
Hello, Chris. I'm just going to do a minor correction there. It's Tognini, like cognac.
Tognini.
There we go. Perfect. We'll make you an honorary Italian. Well played.
OK, well, I've got the hands for it. I wave my hands around like an Italian.
Perfect.
And in the other corner, this corner, well, it's a little bit like a round desk, to be precise. Former radio executive and broadcaster and publisher of Random Notes and Observations, Jim Ball. G'day, Jim. Thank you.
Good to see you, Chris.
Good to see you.
It's been a while.
Yeah, it's been a while, and it's wild outside. You've come out of that, have you?
It certainly has. It's been very, very gusty, is an understatement.
Yeah, you're not wrong. Yeah. Right up and down the southern regions and also the East Coast. All right, I want to start with the family court. Someone once told me that you don't get justice in the family court. The decisions handed down are just a matter of convenience, and when you leave the family court and think your matter has been dealt with, everyone seems to be as angry as hell.
Well, look, it's like any court in the sense that there's always a winner and there's always a loser. And because it's a really seriously emotional arena, those impacts are going to be far, far greater than if you go to court over some civil matter. I just think the emotion involved, the emotion that's been invested in the family over the years, it's going to have greater repercussions psychologically on the protagonists.
Yeah, absolutely, psychologically in particular. I don't get the feeling, Gemma, that the government is intent on really doing a root and branch merge a court and walk away from this.
Well, a root and branch reformation is a proposition over many, many years. You know, I think they're smart enough to understand that that's not something that they can affect, possibly even in this current term of government. One of the sacred cows that I'm about to barbecue, I feel, is really important that we acknowledge, and that is that, first of all, somewhere in the middle of what everybody goes to this court, obviously in a heightened sense of emotional, heightened thing. But what I've witnessed from my own friends and people that I've known, I mean, my own divorce is very simple. Thankfully, avoided the family court. But even that is a heightened, environment. I remember my family lawyer saying, you might feel like you're going to be ripped off, but my job is to make sure that you're not ripped off. And I thought that was an excellent way to explain the perception of the process. But what I will say is this: when you've got, as is often the case when there are children involved, you've got perhaps women who have given up their jobs to raise their children, which is fine. It's often their choice or the family's choice at the time. So they've given up their jobs to raise their children. They may have no financial agency, financial independence, that kind of thing. And they've got a spouse, and I've seen this happen, and I reckon I'm not alone. They've got a spouse who the only thing that they control is the purse strings. So you mentioned men and, some grandparents saying that they don't get to see their kids. Offering a little bit of insight. If you're talking about bargaining chips in a divorce, litigation, which is essentially what it is, divorce is just family litigation. This is what it comes down to. People on either side of the fence going, what do I have to bargain with? As again, it's not right, but it's what happens when hearts are broken and families are breaking up.
And the fact is, in the majority of cases, it's someone with the money and someone else with the kids.
Exactly right, exactly right. And no amount of reform, I mean, the reform is there to make the process more linear, the process cleaner, to clear the backlog, to make the process less bureaucratic. What reform will never do is change human nature in that regard, and that's the sacred cow we have to barbecue. It's not going to change the way people come to the table. OK, but I think conciliation seminars, which you talk to most of the counsellors, that is the lawyers that have to get in and go through this process, have been overwhelmingly successful, and there's not enough of them, and they're not resourced enough. Bring more of them in, absolutely bring more of them in, 100%. And if you can do anything that's charge.
Yeah.
Why wouldn't you?
Yeah, why wouldn't you? Jim, I want to move on. We've said plenty about the family court. I want to move on to something we discussed at a different level last night with another panel here. The crazy transgender debate, which seems to be getting more complicated and fraught with weird propositions. Now, we've had 22 transgender men in the country give birth last year.
Apparently.
Yeah. And now Cricket Australia, the ultra-conservative sporting institution...
I say.
Exactly. Well, they were that way. They've announced a policy saying transgender players should be allowed to use bathrooms, showers and change rooms that align with their affirmed agenda. It opens a whole Pandora's box of trouble, doesn't it?
It does. Look, it's fascinating that when it comes to climate, they say we should trust the science. When it comes to gender, the science gets chucked out the window, eh? But I just want to read you something that Ayn Rand said that pertains to this and a whole lot of other things. She said years ago, Ayn Rand, the uncontested absurdities of today are the accepted slogans of tomorrow. They come to be accepted by degrees, by dint of constant pressure on one side and constant retreat on the other, until one day when they are suddenly declared to be the country's official theology. And that's what's happening.
The loudest minorities are starting to get the
weird
placement.
Stuff is becoming normal.
Yeah.
Yeah. If I had $1 for every gender, you know what I'd have? I'd have $2 and a whole lot of counterfeits. Yeah. That's what I'd have.
Yeah. Well, and look, having a sporting body coming in and saying, well, hang on, you can go to your assigned gender change room, just creates a situation, especially in these early stages when we're dealing with these propositions that are going to be uncomfortable for some people.
Where was the inclusivity and the talking to the clubs at the suburban level?
Yeah.
Were they consulted?
Zip. Nothing. They've found radio going, so...
What the hell's going on?
What the hell is going on? Was not on Cricket Australia's side. He didn't bash them up, but he said it's all very heavy-handed and mystifying. How do you describe it?
I think it's lunacy, and I think it just shows how critically divorced Cricket Australia are from the grassroots stakeholders. I mean, if you look at a state like Victoria, if the law goes through, someone will be able to identify as a different gender to the one that they were born with or born as, without so much as a doctor's consultation, without so much as any kind of counselling. So let's just say a man wakes up, decides over a period of time to self-identify as a woman, rocks up to his local cricket club, wants to play and is legally entitled to under the Constitution of Cricket Australia and how it interacts with its clubs. And in that case, that man is able to share, change facilities and toilet facilities with young girls.
Way too invasive. Way too invasive.
This is the thing that trans activists and other activists, not just trans activists, other activists say, oh, don't be sensationalist, don't extrapolate too far. But this is what happens and is happening. And I have no, my view, Chris, is live your life in peace and do no harm to others. That's the thing. But this is imposing, for all the talk about inclusion. This is the imposition of an individual's choice to transition to another gender on everyone and everything around them in the community. Everything. A mother of small girls is expected to acquiesce to everything that entails. A mother of young boys is expected to acquiesce to everything that entails. It removes from parents the decisions around how they communicate really complicated matters with their children and at what level they expose them to. It's not okay. It's okay for a person to make choices for their own life that affects their own life. But when it starts this ripple effect through the rest of the community, it's okay for the rest of us to say, hang on a second, we have agency in this. We have the right to have input into this.
Exactly.
We were told all along, don't worry about the slippery slope. Safe, safe schools, same-sex marriage. This is all part of the same trajectory. But there's one other thing that I haven't heard anybody say. I wrote about it a couple of weeks ago, just in one sentence. I regard in sport, this transgender business, in sport, it's cheating. Yeah. It's like drug taking. Yeah. What we've got is males passing themselves off as female psychologically, but they are in fact cheating physiologically, because underneath it all, they are male. You talk to the other athletes, who in some cases are gagged. That's exactly how they feel, Jim. Yeah.
Yes.
And of course, female sport, I think, come back in 50 years, 20 years, whatever, it'll be a totally different beast to what it is now.
You're quite right. jump in on that one, and you only have to look at how vilified, you know, the tennis great Martina Navratilova was for coming out and saying trans athletes shouldn't be allowed to compete against women. And that is just an excellent example of how skew-if and off the rails on the crazy train this whole thing around sport has gone. I've got a friend who is a professional, semi-professional cyclist, competes internationally. Her specialist is track cycling, and she said to me, Gemma, why would I bother? I am never going to win against someone who was born biologically a man. I am never going to win. And that is the truth.
It's cheating, and it's a form of drug taking.
And at the highest...
How many women are trying to compete against the men? Let's ask ourselves that question. How many trans men are trying to compete?
And at the...
They're giving birth.
That's right, 22 of them. And at the highest level, the elite level, records are going to be besmirched.
That's right.
Forever.
Yeah.
It's just...
we had that case recently where, I forget which country, but he was about number 400 in the world when it came to whatever. He was number 300.
Yeah.
And all of a sudden, overnight, he's number 10 in the world. Yeah, yes, but mad.
Because he's changed to a woman.
I want to move on to our last topic. This is quite amazing. There's a situation going on in Adelaide with a local council there. It's one of these greenie councils. They have decided that from now on, they want to ban helium balloons. This is on the table. They're voting, basically, to stop helium balloons and plastics in the air. Jim, why do these greenie councils have to always take it too far?
Well, they're seeking relevance. That's the first thing.
That's right.
They're 15... Andy Warhol's 15 minutes of fame.
Yeah.
That's part of it. They're nobodies. All of a sudden, they're on the council and they think, gee, I've got to make my mark.
Rates, roads and rubbish are too boring for them.
Absolutely right. You read my script. That's the three things. Roads, rates and rubbish, dull, dull, dull. They're seeking relevance. And the other thing, these balloons, as I understand it, reading that article, this is the West Torrens Council, these balloons are made of biodegradable rubber or latex, and they show...
So they're not polluting waterways, definitely.
No.
They're going too far for that.
That's right.
And they dissipate.
That's something like that, yeah. Apparently, I don't know.
I love the research. I love the research. Gemma, can I ask you, you know, they're considering bans on Australia Day celebrations, all these councils. They're in Perth, they're in, you know, inner Melbourne. There are some in Sydney even in thinking about that. Then they want to get rid of our Australian flags. That occurred in Bendigo, and I raised that this week. And now they want to get rid of, basically, parties. They've become party police.
I really do. It really is quite extraordinary to see councils giving ratepayers yet another reason to resent them and wish that they would be eradicated in a reform of local government. I mean, it's not that hard to do roads and rubbish. It's not that hard to do infrastructure and community safety. But you talk about a search for relevance. Honestly, is it a conglomerate of people with nothing to do other than to try and cancel Christmas and socially engineer the rest of us? I read on the front page last Sunday night, we were talking about a council in I believe it was Geelong, I could be wrong, but it was somewhere in Victoria, you know, giving its, you know, downloading an app for its residents to complain about its, you know, their neighbours, you know. It is just... Yeah. Well, go volunteer at a homeless shelter. Go work for Salvos one day a week. Do something constructive with your time.
Well, we had a situation in my Northern Beaches area recently where we had yellow bin, blue bin, red bin, right?
Yeah. For
rubbish, paper, plastic and so on, glass. They replaced them with red bin, blue bin, yellow bin. And I wrote to the Manly Daily and it didn't get published saying, why? What's this? And this was so, there was going to be a thing on it, an app. You could download an app so you can track where your rubbish is going. And I'm going, I don't care where my rubbish is going.
It's rubbish.
Bin, for God's sake.
It's rubbish.
It's rubbish. Unbelievable. It was a $15 million exercise to replace every garbage bin on the Northern Beaches. Sorry?
I quite like to recycle. I mean, I'm a bit of a... I'm definitely not a greenie, but my dad grew up in the mountains of Italy, so we tend to like to reuse everything and bury everything else. I quite like to recycle, but honestly, the insanity of the council I live in is that they're very progressive, but I don't have a green waste bin. I've only got, you know, standard recyclables and busy,
they've got to catch up. They've got to catch up. I've got to leave it there, Gemma. You've been so good for us tonight. Thank you very much for being part of our panel.
For having me.
Great stuff. And Jim Ball, once again.
Thank you, Chris.
Hopefully see you next week, eh?
Yeah, well, I'll be here.
Good stuff.
I'll be here for sure.
As I will be next week. I'm heading off to start my weekend. Good. Good night.